Right, so Simon Gotch and Enzo Amore are two former WWE wrestlers who have had a backstage and real-life feud that has transcended wrestling, and despite the fact they were both never past the mid-card in their WWE careers, the feud is still talked about to this day in 2025, despite the fact that both of them are nearly 8 years out of the company. And a big part in that is thanks to a video that you've probably been recommended thousands of times before, and we're going to get to that in a second, but like the video as we talk about the real-life feud and the full story of the drama between Simon Gotch and Enzo Amore. As Enzo Amore and Simon Gotch both signed for the WWE at a pretty similar time period, with Enzo Amore joining the company in August 2012 and Simon Gotch joining a little bit after in June of 2013. They were both part of that Dusty Rhodes era of NXT Black and Gold, the very early stages of the NXT Performance Center, and are some NXT OGs. And both men were known in NXT for their runs in their respective tag teams, and both had pretty solid runs in NXT with all things being said. Enzo Amore would team with Colin Cassidy, later known as Big Cass, and they were also managed by Carmella in NXT. And Simon Gotch alongside Aiden English would form the Vaudevillains, and they would actually have a tag title reign in NXT and were pretty over as a babyface team at one point. And speaking of overness, Enzo and Cass, despite never winning the tag titles in their entire careers in WWE, were insurmountably over and incredibly over with the WWE crowds. Easily one of the most over acts in their time in WWE. And that was mostly down to Enzo Amore's mic work and his little intro he would do every time they entered, you know, certified G, bonafide stud, all that, you can't teach it. And both teams were called up to the main roster around the same time as well, to different brands, with the Vaudevillains being called up to SmackDown just before Mania 32, and Enzo and Cass debuting on the Raw after WrestleMania. But it wouldn't take long for the two teams to cross paths, as both teams would enter a tag title tournament where the winners would become #1 contenders for the belts. And of course, both teams of Enzo and Cass and the Vaudevillains would make it to the finals and were set to meet each other at that year's Payback event, with the match taking place and being a bit of a disaster in the end, to say the least. This was due to a moment in the match where Simon Gotch would inadvertently concuss Enzo Amore after trying to throw him out of the ring. Enzo's head would bounce off the bottom rope and then off the canvas, with the match having to end early, and the Vaudevillains were awarded the W and became #1 contenders for the New Day's Tag Team Championships, which they would then challenge for at Extreme Rules, the very next pay-per-view, in a losing effort. And from there, the Vaudevillains were essentially a jobber team for the rest of their time in WWE. And less than a year later, on April 5th, 2017, the Vaudevillains team would come to an abrupt end when Simon Gotch was released from his WWE contract. And in an interesting report from the Wrestling Observer right after his release, they reported that Simon Gotch had actually had a backstage incident just the day before his release. Reportedly, he accidentally tipped over his chair, got upset when he fell down, and made a scene in front of everybody backstage. A puzzling and interesting report to say the least, but take it with a grain of salt, it's Wrestling Observer, Dave Meltzer, etc, etc. And as for Enzo Amore and the rest of his time in WWE, he would continue teaming up with Big Cass. However, they were never able to capture the tag titles despite how over they were. They just missed their boat of opportunity, with the team eventually breaking up and Enzo Amore becoming a single star in the Cruiserweight division, even winning the Cruiserweight title at a time where he had tremendous backstage heat. One of the biggest and main stories about Enzo Amore is that people were never able to separate the in-ring character from the real-life person, and that caught him heat backstage in WWE. And all the while this was going on and Enzo Amore was catching heat in the WWE, Simon Gotch would go onto RF Video for a shoot interview that would release on the 17th of August 2017, and it would feature a long section where he talks about Enzo Amore. One of the best stories Simon Gotch tells in this interview is about Enzo Amore breaking his leg from doing a very simple submission hold.
So there'd be things like that. There'd be things like he'd want to do shit in matches that were just completely stupid. At one point, I remember actually throwing up my hands and saying, I am a 30-year-old man. I've been doing this for 12 years. I'm too fucking old to be arguing with you about what we're going to do in a fake fight. We had one where it was even where I would try to work with him, where it'd be like, okay, we're going to do this spot, whatever. Low bridge me, I'll go out. And I was like, I'm going to try and land on the apron. If I do, come to me. I'm going to give you the hangman. If I miss the apron for any reason, Just so you know, because I knew he wasn't very good. If I land on the floor, come after me, I'll grab your feet, trip you, and I'll just spin you around and start glomming you. Which is it going to be? Like, I don't know. I'm going to try and land on the apron. I'm telling you I might miss. There's a possibility of that. I've missed the apron before going out. I'm trying to warn you of this so you know, if that happens, what to do. Well, what you going to do? What you going to do? I'm like, I finally gave up. I was like, I'll go to the floor and I'll trip you, okay? Oh, okay. It's like, it's shit like that where you're like, do you not know how to wrestle? He broke his own leg trying to counter a wrist lock.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, when he was in the wheelchair on NXT TV, that's how it happened. He broke his own leg trying to counter a wrist lock. He blamed it on the canvas being loose. Which, okay, let's say the canvas is loose. I've wrestled on loose canvases before. You know how many ankles are broken? 0. So there was that.
And my personal favourite bit and funniest part of this interview is Simon Gotch talking about how he questions Enzo Amore's so-called admiration for Dusty Rhodes, because there was apparently a time where Enzo Amore somehow thought that Kalisto, the former WWE luchador, was in the same era of wrestling as Dusty Rhodes and they faced each other.
But just to give you a level of his understanding of wrestling, you were interviewing Manny Fernandez earlier, correct?
Yes.
Okay. One of the guys who's an unsung hero of Pro Wrestling Iron is a guy named Frank Murdoch. He also worked under the name Frank Dalton. He used to do WCW B shows with Manny. Now, one day, we were sitting in the one of the conference rooms watching videotape, bullshitting with Bill. So it's like me, English, Sasha, Bailey, Enzo Cassidy. It's a bunch of, like, his class, basically, Bill's class. We're in there. And we're just telling different funny wrestling stories. And the story I had was that many years ago, when they were doing the WCWB shows, Manny and Frank had homesteaded this one random town. Manny had convinced this Mark car dealer to sell Frank a car. So he writes up a loan. He does all this shit under the name Frank Murdoch. The problem is Frank Murdoch doesn't exist. His name is Kelly New. But this guy's, he does it without ID. He does also because he's such a mark for Manny, and so he gives them a car. So one day, Manny disappears with the car, and Frank's like, well, my name ain't on it, I don't give a fuck.
Right.
So I tell this story. Enzo, who claims to be the hugest Dusty Rhodes fan in the world, Dusty's he's my mentor, all this stuff. Oh man, I can't believe Kalisto would do that. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone just does the Raging Bull, Manny Fernandez, Dusty's tag partner, the guy you supposedly is your mentor. Oh, because Kalisto's name is Manny Rodriguez. And Enzo's the type of guy that would try to play that off like it was a joke and he knew.
Right.
But he legitimately knew nothing about wrestling. He seems like that guy who started watching wrestling in like 1998 and has never seen anything other than Raw.
And this section of the interview was clipped up and posted on YouTube with the title Simon Gotch Buries Enzo Amore and has been stuck in everyone's recommended since then. I would highly recommend it though. Once I finally did get around to watching it after it was recommended to me a million times, it was absolutely worth it. As for Enzo Amore though, he was eventually released from the WWE himself in January of 2018 following his arrest, and after a few years of the Simon Gotch Buries Enzo Amore video picking up virality and millions of views, Enzo Amore would finally have his say and respond to Simon Gotch and the video.
When you were training, I think you broke your leg early on. What happened with that? Simon Gotch, we did an interview with Simon. He claimed that you broke your own leg trying to counter, and I guess you blamed it on a loose canvas or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, dude, let's not get into nuts and bolts. Yeah, I broke my own leg. You got to go out there and break a leg. Are you kidding? All right, let's get one thing out of the way here, okay?
The elephant in the room, if you will.
No, it's not an elephant in the room in my world. I won't even say his name, okay, until I get to the punchline. All right?
All right.
So let me tell you about a particular guy and his partner, Aiden English, who, by the way, I had my tryout with Aiden English, and we got signed at the same time, so I love Aiden. We worked so many matches with those guys. And there's a guy that you just mentioned who's wrestled and for 10 years, 12 years, and wants this thing so bad. And I'm sorry, kid. I'm like, it's not going to be that easy when you got Enzo and Cass around, bro. So one day we do promo class, all right? You know what promo class is?
Of course.
You go up there, you cut a promo. But at this point in the stature of NXT, we got a television brand that's now starting to pick up steam. And now Michael Cole and Dusty Rhodes and, other people who sit in the hierarchy of production and commentating and our producers, you know, are sitting at a table every Wednesday before we do tapings on Thursday in NXT. And what you say at that taping could get you booked on TV tomorrow. For some people, could get you a debut or could get you looked at. So those opportunities were huge for people. Simon Gotch, here's his name. Aiden English, pop up. Me and Cass have yet to do our promo. The big wigs are hanging out that night. We got TV tapings the next day. I look at this guy, and he's in his ring gear, you know, the suit and tie button downs, you know, he's in his ring gear now.
Right.
The thing or whatever. So I don't remember exactly what we said. But me and Big Cass start buzzing about Aiden English and Simon Gotch. Okay? And I say, Simon Gotch, let me tell you something about Simon Gotch. You guys want to know something about Simon Gotch? I'll tell you something about Simon Gotch. Simon Gotch has got a pair of titties like a 65-year-old woman. How you doing? At this point in the room, huge pop. They all turn around. Simon Gotch has his Andre the Giant singlet on. And his little bitch titties hanging over the top of it. And he makes the mistake of picking it up and putting it over. Double pop. Clearly, going down the line now, we see that the remnants of those words have hung heavy in the titty of Simon Gotch. And I see the bitch in his heart when, whenever he opens his mouth and mentions my name. Because that's the only time that anybody gives a fuck about what he's saying.
It's mainly a question just because it's something that wouldn't leave my YouTube recommendation alone for about 3-4 years, to the point that it became a meme all over the internet, all over Twitter, all over Reddit, of the Simon Gotch Buries Enzo Amore YouTube video. What was your reaction to that? And have you guys kind of been able just to move past that now? Have you guys had any sort of conversation from that? And when you see that and you see how much it's kind of popping up.
Literally, he's famous for that one thing. Nobody remembers any matches he had. Nobody remembers any good matches he had. Nobody remembers anything in his life except for the fact that, he's the guy who knocked out Enzo. So I guess he holds it a grudge and he's really upset about it. But I don't have any hate in my heart for anybody. If I saw him, I wouldn't say a fucking word to him. He's not worth my breath. And on this conversation, congratulations, kid. I made you famous.
And yeah, that is the full history between Enzo Amore and Simon Gotch, a history that transcends both inside WWE and outside of it, and on YouTube as well. If you guys want to see more kind of videos where I chronicle wrestling feuds and real life backstage heats and drama and rivalries in kind of shoot interview format with back and forth between the two, let me know, like the video and comment down below who you'd want to see me do that with. As for Enzo Amore and Simon Gotch, it absolutely will not be the last time you hear about their feud, because there are 3 things certain in life: death, taxes, and Simon Gotch Buries Enzo Amore being recommended in your algorithm for years upon end. Like the video if you did enjoy, comment down below what video you want to see next. I've been Top 10 Wrestling, see you all in the next one, goodbye and keep on rolling.